DocTalk is brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals.
Hey folks, welcome to the show today. We have a special guest, Dr. Dee Ellis from Texas A&M, where he is a veterinarian for the Institute for Infectious Animal Diseases. And we're going to talk about something that is so routine and something that whether you're moving your pet with you on vacation or selling cattle across the country, that you need to work with your veterinarian, which are health certificates. So stay tuned for a great show.
As dependable as the sunrise, in dairy parlors, open pastures, on ranches and feed yards across America. A place where reputation is more than a name, where the science of healthier animals is a way of life. It's the responsibility that drives who we are and what we do. Every decision, every day. It's your livelihood and our responsibility.
Closed captioning brought to you by VetGun with Amel and new AMA Abamectin Vet Caps, the 1-2 punch against hornfly resistance from AgriLabs.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome to Doc Talk. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Dee Ellis, who's a veterinarian for the Institute for Infectious Animal Diseases at Texas A&M University. Busy man. You've had an unbelievable career in veterinary medicine and regulatory veterinary medicine. And now you're coming kind of full circle when we're going to talk about health certificates.
Yes, that's right. Well, howdy y'all, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm proud to be part of the show.
Well, we're thankful. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved with health certificates. You know, you've been able to see this at many different levels.
Right. Well, in my veterinary career, I've been involved in practice where I was writing health certificates. And then I went over to the Texas Animal Health Commission in the regulatory world, worked there for 30 years, ended up as state veterinarian and regulated health certificates and also helped with rulemaking about the things that are inside of a health certificate. And then I jumped over to Texas A&M, and now I'm part of a process, proud to be part of a process with the National Pork Board in Texas A&M, where we're developing new electronic health certificates. So I'm looking at this from a different angle. And regardless of whether you're a veterinarian or a producer or a regulator or a vendor trying to make a health certificate, there's one commonality with them, and is that they're kind of confusing and they're very important. And so hopefully today we can help the folks out there understand what needs to be done and why they're important.
Yep. Well, I've gotten the privilege to get to know Dr. Ellis through EVP Beef class and through some of our joint collaborations between Kansas State and Texas A&M, and to find someone that's willing that was the state veterinarian for the state with the agriculture base that Texas has, it's pretty awesome to get him on the show to talk about something that everybody is doing. So let's start right out. So the number one reason we have health certificates is to move animals, right?
Correct. And you know, you want to move healthy animals, and sometimes there's a human issue as well as an animal component of the health status of the animals. Also, there's certain diseases that can be regional or national in scope, and so the rules regarding what needs to be in a health certificate or a certificate of veterinary inspection issued by a veterinarian depend on where you're going, where you're from, and what the status is of disease components in the state at that time. So I thought we'd just try and make some sense out of it.
Yeah, and there's different ones, right? I mean, if you're going to move an animal to Russia versus going to move one to
Correct.
Missouri.
So first of all, let's remember that any involvement in a health certificate is a partnership between the owner of the animal and the veterinarian issuing it. And then the third component of that is the entity that regulates it, and that's either U.S. Department of Agriculture if they're going internationally, and for interstate movements or even intrastate movements, say to some major shows, the state of that, where you're at, has the rules and regulation. And so it's also important to know that not all veterinarians can or will write health certificates, so you have to do your homework in advance to get prepared, because this can take a few days to get these things ready.
Yeah, and the veterinarian has to inspect the animal, and so...
Correct. You know, it depends on the animal. So you've got livestock, exotic livestock, you've got companion animals, you have actually some wildlife, and then there's also zoo animals, and so they all have different rules and regulations, and that may require different kinds of veterinarians to help you ensure that you can move the animals when you want to.
Well, this is a great start to something that everybody that has animals has questions about, and you always go in to get your health paper. You're going to get to kind of see now why we do them, how we do them, from someone who is now even building them. More on Health Papers with Dr. Dee Ellis after these messages. Hey folks, Dr. Dan from DocTalk here. Thanks for joining me for our Cattle First tip today, sponsored by Boehringer Ingelheim Vet Medica. And we're talking about injection sites. And injection sites, all of our injections go in the neck. Here's a picture of the injection site triangle that you can see is underneath the nuchal ligament, above the vertebral column, and in front of the point of the shoulder. This injection site triangle is where we will put all of our injections for cattle. Now, if we're going to do 2 injections in that area, we put about a hand's width apart between the 2 injections. Nothing goes in the top butt, nothing in the round, nothing over the ribs. Now, if you're going to do a sub-Q injection, you go in at a 45-degree angle with a 5/8 inch or 1/2 inch needle. If you're going to do an intramuscular injection, you go in perpendicular to the calf with an 1 to 1.5 inch length needle. This is your Cattle First tip.
If my calves start healthy and stay healthy, I've got a good shot at making money. That is why I trust Clostrix. It gives my calves the protection they need until their own immune systems kick in.
Calf raisers trust Colostrix colostrum supplements. Colostrix is USDA licensed and proven effective. When your money is on the line, trust Colostrix.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
ValleyVet.com, ValleyVet.com, Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome back to Doc Talk. Dr. Dan Thompson here with Dr. Dee Ellis, who's a veterinarian at the Institute for Infectious Animal Diseases at the Texas A&M University.
That's right.
And, just a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, good friend, and glad to have you here. Talk to me a little bit about, there are different regulatory officials, whether it's the USDA, other people, that the state health officials.
Sure. So USDA, we'll say USDA in this context, but we're talking about one agency of it, USDA Veterinary Services, which is the entity within the APHIS component of USDA that manages animal health issues and diseases, both domestically, and they're also involved in international trade issues as well. So there's sometimes some regulations at the national level, and then there's sometimes regulations at the state level. So the entity at a state that is involved with animal health is the state veterinarian, which is usually part of a Department of Agriculture. There's about 10 states where they're a standalone agency. And then if you break out dogs and cats, sometimes they're in the public health component. But basically, if you think about it, there's federal rules and there's state rules regarding the movements of animals in the United States. And so these two work together, these two entities, state and federal, work as partners to accommodate them.
And I think the other thing is like if I'm going to send an animal from Kansas to New Mexico, I don't have the person that's setting the regulations or what needs to be done is the people receiving the animal, right?
That's correct. In most cases at the state level, so if you live in Kansas and you want to go to New Mexico to a rodeo or go visit relatives or even take your horse and go ride the mountains, the most common question is, who do I call? Well, you call the state of destination. Now, ultimately, it's the veterinarian who's writing the health certificate's role to do that. but owners can be prepared and help their veterinarian by getting knowledgeable in advance of what they need to do. And we'll talk about that later in the show about what those requirements are. But state of destination or the country of destination is involved with setting the rules. And so if you're going internationally to another country, USDA helps you get the paperwork in order in your veterinarian, and they validate it. But basically what they're doing is making sure that that certificate has the rules and regulations that meet the country of destination. They can be very complicated. And so again, a local veterinarian is working with both state and federal officials to work this out on your behalf if you're trying to move animals.
I could always remember at the end of the bull sales we'd be sitting there and you'd have all these bulls that are fixing to get shipped out. And we would have to call the state veterinarian as I was writing the health papers to find out exactly what tests had to be done and what they needed as far as health paper insurance.
That's right, and there's some resources available now, both on the web and also some things we'll show you and tell you about later in the show about references, resources where you can find that out. But my message to y'all out there is, if you know you're going to take a bull to another country, find out in advance what the rules are, and then discuss those with the veterinarians and make sure you understood them right, because ultimately they make that call, not the owner of the animals, the consignee or the consignor.
And the other one is, the reason why we do this, I mean, it's to prevent disease transmission,
well,
right?
You know, you want to send healthy animals, and also remember that animals in certain parts of the country are at higher risk of getting diseases. For example, in the greater Yellowstone area, there's brucellosis out there that spills over into cattle, and it's endemic in elk and bison to a lesser degree. So if you're moving cattle in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, you may be held to different requirements. The other states are looking at you going, we trust you, but yet we want to verify that with a test. And that's an example of where a local or a regional issue can change the requirements for animals that are being moved interstate.
It's awesome. We're going to take a break, folks. We're lucky to have Dr. Dee Ellis here with us today.
Did you know long-range planning through the checkoff can help keep your business profitable? To successfully pass on cattle operations from one generation to the next, it's important to promote beef and keep farms and ranches profitable. Your Beef Checkoff helps do that.
I'm Tom Perrier. Our ranch is called Dale Banks Angus. Dale Banks is not a person, but it's a place. This ranch was started by my great-grandfather. He came from northwest England, and his farm there was called Dale Banks, and so he called his ranch here in the Flint Hills Dale Banks. The Beef Checkoff today has fulfilled a lot of needs that our industry had over the years. We were very involved in trying to get the Beef Checkoff passed back in the 70s and early 80s because we saw the need then, and the Beef Checkoff, I think, has fulfilled a lot of those needs.
I think some of the biggest bonuses that we've gotten from the Beef Checkoff in the last 20 years have been twofold, both in the research phase of the industry, one being the Beef Quality Assurance Program that showed us just how much money we could capture by simply doing things like moving the injection sites from the hip and rump of the animal up to the neck, where we had less high-valued cuts. That drove millions of dollars into our industry. The other thing that our beef industry did about 15 years ago was embark on new product development, things like the flat iron steak and things that used to get ground into hamburger and other low-valued cuts today are sold for a premium, and that too, just like the Beef Quality Assurance Program, has driven huge dollars into our industry that we all get to share.
Matt's the primary driver behind the operation right now, and he's the 6th generation, and his children will be the 7th generation.
I hope our kids are better at telling our beef industry's story. I think the last several years the Beef Checkoff has shown us how to do that better. They've given us some tools to do that, so we need to do a better job of telling the wonderful story that we have, and I hope our kids can continue to do that.
You spent countless hours building a strong operation. But when it comes to trichomoniasis, the odds are stacked against you. It takes just one infected bull to take down the whole herd. Damage could include open cows, lost pregnancies, and lost profits. The good news is, with TrichGuard, a herd doesn't have to feel like a house of cards.
When you're in the cattle business, no matter how much it's a business, it still starts with cattle. It's this basic notion that sits at the core of how we approach things at Boehringer Ingelheim. We understand when you put the cattle first, it just naturally leads to doing the right things. If you want to do well in this business, you start by doing right. Take care of the cattle, and they'll take care of you.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
ValleyVet.com, ValleyVet.com, Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson here with veterinarian Dr. Dee Ellis. He's a veterinarian for the Institute of Infectious Animal Diseases, which is one of our leading centers for infectious animal diseases in livestock and much more in the United States, located at Texas A&M. And talk to me a little bit about some of the, scientific examples of, when we left, we were kind of talking about the brucellosis in the elk. But, we have trick, we have TB, we have, different diseases.
Sometimes in a perfect world, all the time, rules for movements of animals are based on science and based upon the disease, the incubation period, and the way the disease is spread. An example of that would be, there's about 30 states now in the United States that require a test for bovine trichomoniasis in bulls moving interstate. It's a venereal disease. This is not a national program, it's state by state. There are national programs where the requirements would be the same across all 50 states. Here's an example where certain states, especially out west where they have bulls, different owners grazing in open community pastures up in the mountains, they want to make sure that these bulls are free of this disease that can cause abortions. And so the disease is sexually transmitted, which means if you're not sexually mature, then you don't need to worry about that animal spreading this disease. So here's an example of a science-based rule that says bulls have to be tested prior to movement into our state, because then they would be 18 months in age of up, and that's just a guesstimate as to when they would be mature, knowing that English breed bulls and dairy bulls will mature a little sooner than some of the Brahmas or Brahma crosses. Another example, tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a disease that is endemic in Mexico, and we import about a million Mexican stocker cattle through land ports every year into the United States. And so here's a situation where even though they get tested coming in, it's a hard disease to detect, and it's a slow incubating disease. And so there are many rules and regulations about the testing of Mexican origin animals, including the roping steers, the Corriente breed steers out of Mexico that are in the PRCA and the rodeo circuits. They're held to higher standards for testing, and for example, many states require roping steers, and you'll know they're of Mexican origin because they'll have an M brand on their hip. They may have to be tested every year as long as they're around, regardless of where they are or what they're doing, just because this could be a disease that takes a long time to manifest itself, and it's a disease that affects humans as well as animals. And so science directs at-risk categories to be held to higher standards for testing, and those are reflected on the health certificates that you may have to in place to move your animals, whether it's interstate or intrastate.
So there's a website, this interstatelivestock.com, that a person can go to, correct?
I think this is a great start. If you're just out there wondering, I've got an uncle in Montana and I live in Kansas and I'm thinking about taking my horses up to SEAM. This isn't the official website. It's sponsored though by U.S. Animal Health Association and the National Institute for Animal Agriculture. They co-host this and are great partners with the livestock industry and veterinarians. But you can go online and you can fill out open it up and say, I've got a horse and I live in Kansas and I'm going to Montana, and it will tell you generally what the rules and regulations would be to move there. And so if you need to get certain tests and certain inspections, you'll know when you call your veterinarian, you can begin to talk to them about this because they don't have all these rules and regulations. So again, I can't stress enough a partnership between the owner and veterinarians to be prepared in advance so that when you're ready to go, your animal's ready to go and they're still not waiting on a test result that hadn't come back yet.
Perfect. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll do a wrap-up on how to plan ahead with those health certificates before you take a trip.
If my calves start healthy and stay healthy, I've got a good shot at making money. That is why I trust Clostrix. It gives my calves the protection they need until their own immune systems kick in.
Calf raisers trust Colostrix colostrum supplements. Colostrix is USDA licensed and proven effective. When your money is on the line, trust Colostrix.
Some call it a come-from-behind victory, an unlikely win, a reversal of fortune, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. This is our moment, our victory dance, because we choose confidence. We choose Zuprevo for BRD treatment. Ask your veterinarian to prescribe Zuprevo. Zuprevo is a fast-acting, long-lasting BRD treatment that you can count on to get the job done. Choose confidence. Choose Zuprevo from Merck Animal Health.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson here with Dr. Dee Ellis, and we are talking about health certificates. Dr. Ellis is a veterinarian for the Institute for Infectious Animal Diseases at Texas A&M. We're talking about where to go look at the website, but then when you look at the website, some of the other things that you need to do is there's a could be a pretty significant list that you have to plan ahead.
That's true. Depends on the species and where you're located and where you're going, obviously. But some of these things take time. They could take a lot of time depending upon the situation, and so. We'll start with international movements, and these again are the U.S. Department of Agriculture helps your veterinarian, and they endorse the certificate, which basically says we say everything's correct in here, so you don't get overseas and the animal gets rejected. That alone, that process alone can take a number of days, but even more importantly is there could be tests and requirements of things that you have to do to meet other countries' entry requirements that are going to take some time. In other words, you may need to go in a week or 2 weeks or a month in advance and visit with your veterinarian about, first of all, is your veterinarian comfortable writing an international health certificate? There's veterinarians that actually specialize in this, and if yours is not, there's also a difference in a small animal and a large animal component of health certificates. Some veterinarians are able to do both. Some just choose to do small animal only. And so you need to visit with your veterinarian first to make sure they will do this for you, and if they won't, then they usually will be able to refer you to someone that they trust. But just finding a veterinarian, then understanding the rules, and then getting them completed could take weeks for international movements. Stateside's a little bit easier, but we'll still want to talk about that.
Well, but there's things that you have on your list, like tests they may need, maybe vaccinations, different things that might need to be done prior to, just no different than you and I.
That's correct. The different states, so you've got 50 different states out there, and state animal health issues are kind of like a highway department. There's federal funds to build a freeway, but usually the state manages those programs. In the animal health world, there's federal funds that dictate rules for interstate movement, but the state animal health officials have to enforce those. And then each state can have their own rules and regulations. And sometimes a test can be run the same day. Sometimes a test may take 2 or 3 days to get the results back. And then sometimes there could be something, where it's not quite clear if it's positive or negative, and you may have to do a retest. So you need to give yourself probably at least a week in advance if you have to have testing involved. And again, you can find that out at the interstatelivestock.com, or more importantly, call the state of destination and ask them for the rules and regulations, or encourage your veterinarian to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the veterinarian is the one that's ultimately responsible. But yet the one thing is that, folks, the veterinarian has to see this animal.
Yeah, that's the thing. So if you've got a dog or a cat and you're going to a state that requires health certificates, it's a little easier to just load the thing up and take it on in there and get, if it needs a rabies vaccination or whatever. But a horse or a large animal or a pot-bellied pig, it could be a pet. You need to make plans. You're either going to take it to them or they're going to have to come look at it. Veterinarians are less and less interested in making calls out to the farms now, and it also costs more money, so you're always better off bringing your animal to them. But they have to look at that animal directly before they'll issue a health certificate.
Well, thanks for being on the show today. Folks, this is going to be a 2-part series. We're going to run this 2 weeks in a row, so you're going to see us back here next week where we're going to talk more about health papers. But remember to always work with your local veterinarian, and if you want to find out about what we do on DocTalk, you can find us on the web at www.doctalktv.com. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson here with Dr. Dee Ellis. Thanks for watching today, and we'll see you down the road.
Closed captioning brought to you by Vet Gun with Amel and new AMA Abamectin Vet Caps, the 1-2 punch against hornfly resistance, from AgriLabs.
For more information about this program or previous programs, go to DocTalkTV.com.
DocTalk was brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals.